Well, now it has been roughly 1 month since United States and Israel started their full-scale attack on Iran. So I would say now is the first time we could actually start to draw some conclusions of how this war is going and what are the clear winners or losers, if there are any. So first things first. Attack, I wouldn't say, wasn't completely out of the blue, but it certainly wasn't well coordinated, previously planned and made as a full-scale military operation, as it were in the first Gulf War or second Gulf War, where the United States actually had huge planning in advance and they had real military targets. I talked about this in my previous video, but now it's simply, I would say, justifies the point. You clearly see Donald Trump has no real military and political targets here. He simply believed in his own delusion that he might have some sort of huge military success as he had on previous campaigns, for instance in Venezuela. So he believed in himself, and people around him, I don't know whether it was Israel or his closest circle, told him that you have to go for it because you succeeded once, you will succeed once more because you are Donald Trump. But as you are seeing now, yes, Israel and the United States might have some, I would say, military and tactical edge because they obviously have destroyed a lot of Iran's military capacity. They had huge impact, and I would say on long term Iran's military industry, without a doubt. Most of their air force, air defense systems, fleet and strategic military locations have been destroyed, or at least partly destroyed. There is no question about that. There is no question that Iran, from military perspective, doesn't have any real chances against the United States and Israel. That's true. But I have suspicion that Iran sort of anticipated that, and probably they have notion that they might lose America and Israel if they have to go for direct attack. So they had one trick under their sleeve. They started to put whole region into chaos. As you saw, there were rockets flying on states which are former, at least on paper, if not complete allies of Iran, such as Oman, but at least they are having neutral position and they didn't choose America or Iran as their ally, like United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, although Saudi Arabia and Iran has very bad historical relationships. But you got an idea. They didn't put themselves into one or another positions, and they usually try to stay as a middleman. And still, Iran attacked them. Why they did that? Because they wanted to undermine the United States as their ally. They attacked on their infrastructure and on their military targets, which were related to the United States, because the United States has bases there to undermine America. So it is very, very nasty war, but I probably would say quite efficient. And of course, second factor is that they destroyed and attacked Middle East oil infrastructure, and most importantly, of course, closed Strait of Hormuz, which is key trading route for all global oil. Something like 20% of global oil supply goes through there daily, at least before this war started. And as it seems, it's extremely difficult to do something against Iran, because if you want to, I would say, safeguard Strait of Hormuz, you probably should have to have vast military arsenal and military resources before you are starting some sort of war. Otherwise, you are putting there all your military assets, which are worth billions, like aircraft carriers or destroyer ships or something like that, and let them be exposed to a couple of drones or missiles, which could be launched by a couple of men. And that's the problem. This is why Strait of Hormuz is so difficult to keep safe. And Iran is playing that card really well. And here's the thing, actually was mistaken in my assumptions, because I wouldn't believe that Iran would be able to hold this strait closed for a number of weeks or months, because I believe that China will force them to open it, because China is really dependent on the Strait of Hormuz, and this is Iran's main economic ally. But actually they were quite stubborn in their policy, and they are keeping this strait closed despite what everyone says. And from military perspective, this might be a good strategy, because it undermines the United States. It tells that the United States doesn't have any real military victories. They have tactical victories, not strategic victories. And in this way, they are forcing the United States into very long, very expensive war, which the United States at this point isn't prepared of. And Trump is in very bad position. So either he has to make the war, I would say, declare the war as his victory, which this clearly ain't. So it would be quite embarrassment for him and huge risk on his political career, or he has to go on full-scale war, which will cost hundreds of times more in terms of manpower, in terms of military equipment, and in terms of resources. And his whole political campaign was to go against these types of wars, which historically hasn't been developing well for the United States if you look at United States military history. So the situation here is really tricky. So in terms of military, there are no distinctive winners and losers in either side, and probably losers are Gulf states like United Arab Emirates, like Qatar, like Bahrain, in part Saudi Arabia. These are losers because their reputations as safe havens, as luxury resorts, as places for wealthy has been collapsed, because now they are at state of semi-emergency and they have lost their safety reputation, which was most important factor to them. The fact that Iran has lost something, that's quite obvious, because it's involved in war. There is no discussions about it. Maybe Russia might be evolving as some sort of quasi-winner, but it's difficult to say yet because they have their own problems and high oil prices is not their cure. But let's be more objective. The real winners in this war are energy traders and traders in general, because this war has made huge uncertainties and fluctuations in markets. And as you have seen, there is full-blown energy crisis, and traders who speculated on rise of oil products, natural gas and similar stuff are making fortune as we speak. And this happens in every energy crisis and war where energy producing markets are involved. Now we can see this into Middle East war. We saw that in 2022 when Russia launched full-scale invasion in Ukraine. Misspelled this one. We partly saw that in 2003 when Second Gulf War started, but then all disruptions weren't that large. It was seen in 1991 when first Gulf War started. We saw that in 1979, we saw it in 1973. There were huge problems with energy supplies that created inflation, and that was payday for good traders. So if you want to benefit from this war, as cynical as it might sound, your way is to trade energy futures and trade futures in general, because here you will have profit opportunities whether you are trading oil products, gold, stock indices, government bonds, which will fluctuate if we will have some changes in monetary policy and inflation. And all these will be your profit opportunities. Trick is to understand them and to actually to find best way how to trade. And history shows us that trend following has been the best way how you can actually capture best opportunities out of these markets, because let's be honest, we don't have any clue what will happen in the next 6 months. Wars and these types of things are unforeseen and unforecastable by their definition. But one thing we might be sure is that markets will fluctuate and will make huge moves in either direction. Maybe one market, for instance, gold, didn't react as we anticipated, because people might think that gold should have spiked as well, but it didn't. At the same time, oil price did make a huge spike, so one market was flat, other market made money in huge amounts, so in balance we are all in profit. What regular investors did, well, they are simply watching how stock market is behaving mediocre at best, and they'll certainly know that their earnings and savings will disappear because of the inflation. And here I will give you a good example. This is bad for long-term, I would say, conservative investors. At the same time, these identical events are huge opportunity for trend followers. So what you have to do is simply to understand trend following and make money as a trend followers. Decades after decades have shown that this is probably one of the few strategies which actually work if you want to trade. Question is how to trade trend following. For that you have to write me and we will see how we could actually stack together good trend following strategies.